Slinging seeds, sliding on into home, throwing heat, buddy, we're going, gone. If you gotta go down, you gotta go down, swinging, slinging seeds. It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time, slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.
Hey everyone, welcome to another week of Slinging Seeds. I'm your host, Kyle Evans. Across the table from me is my co-host, Doug Adams, and our first-time returning guest for part 2, Sam Faulkner. Sam, how you been, and what you been getting into lately?
Doing good, man. I actually just got back from a snowboard trip this weekend, so I'm feeling really, really good. I feel awesome, actually. I'm in a pretty good headspace. That was my first break in a while. I feel like I needed it, so yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
A little bit of a reset, right?
Very much so. Yeah, it was awesome.
So tell us a little bit about, what you've been getting into lately. Like we had you on in November, and it was a great episode. We had a lot of good feedback, and we went over the stuff that you've been doing since you've been here at P4. Now that you've been here kind of through the off season and stuff, just go ahead and take us through.
Oh man, it's been great here. A lot of the guys have signed up and are working with us now, which has been great. We just did a little bit like of a pre-scout day, I guess, yesterday. And Doug was sending me all the numbers and I was going nuts. I was like, what are the befores? What are the afters? I want to see what these guys are doing. Most guys that have been working have dropped at least 0.2 of a second off of their 60-yard dash. So that's huge. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about a 60-yard dash, that's like, or like even a 40, right? Most people know 40-yard dashes because of the NFL Combine, you know. That's a guy going from a 4.6 to a 4.4 or a 4.4 to a 4. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like 0.2 of a second, although it doesn't seem like a lot, is a huge deal. So I was really pumped about that just to see. And some guys dropped some guys, like one guy dropped a second, which I don't know. That's pretty crazy. And then we had another guy drop so I can't remember all those numbers.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. I mean, yeah, so a little bit on that. So obviously you came out the week before and you were working on starts with a lot of the P413 athletes that you work with now. So tell us a little bit about like that role and what it is being the director of performance for P413 baseball, because yes, you have SF training and you kill it, but you're also running the performance side of P413 baseball. So what has that been like for you?
So do you want me to talk about like the start itself, like how important it is?
Sure.
All right, cool. All right. So in terms of the start, it's going to sound weird, but I always start there, right? Because if the start's not right, it's actually hard to rise up into top speed. So what I was trying to get those guys to understand is that for the first 25 yards, we're building ground speed. And if I don't set you guys up correctly to push the ground, cover a lot of ground in your first 4 steps, because like on the first 10 yards, you want to be at about 6 to 7 steps. And a lot of guys, when we started, were just like churning nowhere, right? So I'm trying to get them to build ground speed for 25 yards. That way, after that 25 yards, they can rise up into top speed. And the start is so crucial because if you don't build good ground speed, it's hard to reach good top end speed mechanics. So there's really no point in training top end speed unless your start is right. So last week it was just hammering the mechanics of the start. I have a weird way I set them up. I try to take every little inch and make sure that they're getting as much out of their first step as possible. So that's what I was working on last week. And then after Doug showed me the times, I'm realizing that I need to work on these guys being able to relax at top end. So when you're accelerating, it's a lot about being able to push the ground. You're aggressive, you're pushing the ground, you're driving, right? But then once you get up into top speed, it's not so much of an effort thing, it's more elastic. So I want them to relax and almost like bounce. If you watch like Olympic track athletes, you'll see them at the top end, they're relaxing their face. They're not grunting it, right?
Yeah.
So they accelerate
So
forward.
they're trying to maintain speed at that point.
And you will actually run faster that way because you want your fascial system to kind of take over at that point. It's not as much muscular. That's why guys that are like big and strong are usually really good at accelerating and not so good at top end because they think they have to force everything.
Right.
So this coming week, preparing for Scout Day, I already told Doug, I don't care if I have the infield or not. I'm taking them outside and I'm making them run past 25 yards and working on their cycle,
Okay.
being able to cycle and relax at top end. So I was really pumped about when I was going through that. I really liked Drake Sauber's start. He looked great. A lot of those guys really have cleaned things up. It's just getting them to do it when they're testing. Because a lot of them, I was talking to Brandon, he was watching them. A lot of them, when they get lined up, they kind of freak out and they just kind of line up however and take off. So I really want them to get set up in the right positions, accelerate, build ground speed after 25 yards they're cycling. So that's what I was working on there. In terms of being the director of P413 baseball, the performance side, I think it's been awesome. And I think a lot of the guys are starting to see the work they put in this offseason start to come to fruition. So I think that's been pretty cool. Guys like Squirrel, he's done really well. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it here. It's a great place to train. So
Yeah, so I mean, you do a lot of stuff here. It's been an insane winter with the amount of athletes that you've been training. And obviously, you were much more into baseball than you've ever been. And you're deep into the baseball world now. How have you had that balance with your basketball players, your track athletes, your literally every athlete you can imagine, right? And mixing in the baseball. So how has this balance been for you this winter?
I think it's worked out really well, especially because a lot of those athletes are training like together. And when we train in here, I think I've talked about this before, is I'm really attacking like general qualities.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, in my mind, that my thought was just how you generalize. So
Yeah. So I'm really like, especially in my program, which a lot of the guys are signed up in, it's not like we're doing a bunch of baseball stuff. You guys do that.
Mhm.
You guys do the baseball stuff. I'm trying to train the engine, the qualities that are going to make them a better baseball player. So like in terms of, basketball players, baseball, I don't even look at guys like that. I look at guys like they're just an athlete. What are they deficient in?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of similarities between basketball players, baseball players in terms of like top and speed, and there's just different reasons that they need it, if that makes sense. Um, Baseball players need top end speed. Number one, because it keeps them healthy, and that goes for every athlete. When you work at max velocity, it actually has a way of protecting soft tissue. And that's why you see a lot of NFL teams, a lot of major league teams, like before games, they will do like a max velocity session where they're getting guys out sprinting as hard as they possibly can, because it prepares the tissues for higher velocities. Um, and if you don't do that on a regular basis, that's when you start seeing guys get injured, like hamstring injuries and things like that. So, number one, that's a big reason for top end speed. Number two is, if you hit a triple, you got to be able to keep rolling. And that's where the curve running and all that stuff comes in. So, we have days that are completely dedicated to curve running. So, for baseball players, for basketball players, football players, whatever it may be, all of these things correlate to their sport and keep them healthy. Like when you run around a curve, your ankles are going through different ranges of motion than what you're usually used to doing, right? So if you just go in and play baseball and that's the first time you ran on a curve, there's a chance you might get hurt. In fact, that's how I got hurt playing football. So I was rushing off the edge and I was running around a curve and I was trying to dip around a tackle and I kind of got pushed out and my left leg hit in a weird position and that's how my ACL blew. And I started thinking about it like later on, like in my training career, and I don't remember a time that I ever ran around a curve in training.
Really?
So it's like, from that perspective, that's a super important thing to train. Top end speed, curve running are two things that you don't see a lot of. You're starting to see it more, but you don't see a lot of in strength and conditioning, and they're just as important as like strength and power, things like that. So
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot of team training as well.
right.
We've seen you work with Oakwood, and then I mean you've had your boys in here,
Gabe
right?
Christian for sure.
Yeah,
And
so
Butler.
tell us a little bit about that, how it is to kind of, yeah, and Butler as well. I forgot about you
Yeah.
were, yeah, heading up with Butler. But tell us a little bit about, organizing some of these programs, general training. You know, obviously it's baseball right now, but I
Yeah.
think you also do with the swimmers at Butler as well, correct?
Yep, we
Yeah,
sat down with
so
them.
you're pretty much like controlling some of these programs. Tell us a little bit about how that is.
So I'll start with like Dayton Christian. Dayton Christian and Butler are actually on the same program, and I'm progressing it to the season. Some exercise, I'll just go over some general things. Like some exercises that I'm looking at with them is I want to improve like their reverse lunge. Reverse lunge. If you I listen to this guy named Dr. Heenan. He talks about how reverse lunges are correlated to like pitching speed and things like that because it's a position that they hit on the mound. So reverse lunges are super important. Sumo deadlifts. I really like sumo deadlifts for baseball players. So those are the types of exercises that I've been progressing throughout this off season. I also really think it's important with these guys to train lateral movements. A lot of baseball players don't train enough lateral movement. And if you think about what they do in their sport, everything's lateral movement, even like their start, you know, because they're always turned towards the pitcher and then they push and drive. So like a lot of the plyometrics that I'm choosing are laterally focused and I'm progressing those. Yeah, those things are super important to me when it comes to training. But yeah, they're like all on the same program. Butler actually trains at their facility. I train Dayton Christian here. Oakwood does once a week. So with Oakwood, I'm just really focusing on speed with them. So, but Dayton Christian's had great results. We've seen some guys get way faster. I mean, like I said, I think it was one of the kids dropped a whole second off their 60, which is really cool. And yeah, I'm excited to watch them play. I think I'm going to be out there quite a bit watching. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Another cool thing, we mentioned some of the schools. I coach at Fairmont, and you've been kind of working with a few of my guys.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about them and how it's been to work with those guys. And I know it's pretty new in your guys' relationship with training them, but just tell me a little bit about those guys.
So we're talking about
Like
so there's actually
Sky, Owen, Doty.
yeah,
and then
right?
there's Eli too.
Oh,
Eli as well. Yeah,
He's gonna be a beast.
yeah.
Eli's an 8th grader. He looks like a grown man. But yeah, those guys are cool. A lot of the stuff that I'm working on with them, they are already big and strong. They've clearly lifted weights before, like Doty and Slifer. They've clearly lifted weights before. So a lot of things I'm working on with them is more like dynamic effort type things. So I'm trying to get them moving lighter weights fast. I'm trying to get them more flexible. So I'm building in a lot of like loaded mobility stuff for them. As well as training those qualities I was talking about earlier. Like that's where those guys struggle is when you get them past 25 yards, are they able to cycle? It's actually really easy. Like Skylar the other day was talking to me about his 40-yard dash and he wanted me to help him with his start. So I went over and lined him up and it literally took me like 2 minutes to get him to do a good 40-yard dash start. I was like, well, he's just big and strong and he understands how to project. And it was kind of easy. But then you get Skylar past 25 yards, it's like, okay, there's some things that we need to work on here. You can't just keep efforting. We have to learn how to relax and bounce that top end. So that's been the majority of those guys. Those Fairmont guys are big and strong, and they need to work on their cycle, and they need to work on being more flexible and loose just so they don't get hurt. Because that's kind of how I was when I was younger. I just liked lifting weights and doing short sprints and jumping on boxes. And that's good. And it transfers to sport. I think acceleration transfers. Like when you do acceleration training, I think it transfers the most to any sport. But you need the other end as well. You need the top end speed. You need the things where you have to relax, contract and relax. You need things like that in your training to keep athletes healthy. And it's just really good. If you look at guys in the NFL, the guys that are really good are good at top end. They're good at cycling, you know. They're good at getting away from people. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the idea behind those when I'm training those guys.
Yeah. So like the way that I'm trying to understand it, because like we've talked about it quite a bit, like that 25-yard mark. It's more or less like putting your foot on the gas and then not taking it off. But like when you're on the highway, we're not always pushing the gas straight up. Like it's just like we're halfway on it because we're just trying to keep that momentum going of that speed that we've created. So that makes sense to me that way.
Being able to relax and being able to bounce. And I think that's a really important aspect of training. I think there's been a huge push for max velocity training recently. There's a guy named Tony Holler that's made it like super popular. But I do think that acceleration is still king for most sports, most field sports. And I think it could get lost if you're just constantly trying to max V. Your acceleration is so important. Acceleration, being able to accelerate out of different positions is really important. And that's the thing that we do in here weekly is we do short sprint sessions where they're accelerating out of different positions, whether it be chasing a guy, whether it be reacting to someone, whether it be coming out of a different, like a rolling pattern and then sprinting. But
Oh yeah, when they're coming off the ground.
yeah, it's being able to do the right things out of the wrong positions.
So obviously you've had a lot of success individual training and group sessions. A little bit, I mean, how is it different when you have the team situation where teams start training with you? Does that feel different? Does it change your plan of attack? And then, I mean, what would you say to coaches out there that didn't realize they could have their team work with you, and how do they go about that process of getting involved in that?
Every team's been a little bit different. I will say there's massive similarities between Dayton Christian and Butler. Massive. It almost feels like I'm training the same team. Other teams that I've trained, it's a little bit different. What I'm saying is with those two teams is those guys are ultra competitive. So I'm going to take advantage of that. So like every day I warm them up. We do a really good mobility session, and then we're playing some sort of game. And Dayton Christian likes playing ultimate frisbee. They like almost kill each other every day. So, if they're
No, that's funny.
well, it's great. It's great.
It's your kids.
If you know anything about me and Trent Dews, it fits.
Yeah, and Trent's guys are the same way.
As competitors, yeah.
Yeah, they're competitors. So if I put them, and that's better than any dynamic warm up, because that involves the brain.
Mhm.
You think about like, I've kind of done away with like doing A skips, B skips, the typical dynamic warm up stuff. I've kind of gotten away from doing some of that because number one, I do it myself now. I'm 32 and I'm training. When I do it myself, I don't feel like I'm not warm. I'm not ready to do any of this stuff right now just because I did these weird skips. I need something that involves the brain. So with those guys, it's like, let's do some mobility. Let's make sure you feel good enough to like run. And then when we play this game, that's what's really gonna warm you up. And with teams like that, teams like Dayton Christian, where every single guy wants to be the best, they all want to be the best. So I'm putting them in a situation to be the best, to prove that they're the best,
Yeah.
And I'll let them almost fight. I will let them go right to the edge to where it starts getting a little bit unproductive, and then I'll cut it, but I'll let them
Just
compete with each other because that's so important. And some kids are scared of that. Some kids are afraid to compete. So when they come into my sessions, like even if it's a game of knee tag, you guys ever seen me play knee tag?
Yeah,
Guys?
For sure.
Which is really good primer drill for a number of reasons. It's really good for agility and change of direction because it makes you get down in those positions. Because if you don't, the dude's just going to tag your knee in a half a second. But some kids are like definitely afraid of playing a knee tag game. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, well, when you go to practice, are you afraid to like? So I think that mental side of training, just being able to compete at any time and you can just send it, is so important. Because even if you're not the most athletic kid, but you're not afraid, all your athleticism is going to show. Whereas the kid that might be more athletic than you might be like naturally faster, naturally stronger, whatever it may be. If he's afraid to compete and he doesn't want to put himself on the line, he's not going to get the same opportunities. So for me, training these teams, it's like if the teams are very competitive, I'm going to make them compete even more, So I think that's a huge piece. I don't really know if I answered your question properly, but
No, you're
Yeah.
makes all the sense in
For
the
us
world.
as coaches, though, just to kind of kick into the competition piece a little bit, any chance that we can get to see our kids compete, it's really, really good data for us to kind of gather and see
I mean,
kids perform.
I think it's the hardest thing to teach in this generation.
Oh yeah,
Now, I hate when people go, "Hey, the kids are different." No, they're not. The adults are different. They let them get away with different stuff.
Right.
The kids are not different. If you tell the kids we're going to do it this way, they just know that that's how it's done. So, I mean, I think competitiveness is crucial. So, anytime you get a chance to be competitive, I think it's massive, right? I think life's competition. Right? Everybody's going to compete as long as you're doing it the right way and you're respecting others. I mean, I think competition's key.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing. You know, I mean,
So if a coach out there is watching this and they're like, wait, I mean, my whole team can work with you. I mean, I mean, how do they reach out? You know, how do they go about that? And
I mean, contact me or contact Doug, contact me or Doug, and we'll get you guys set up, and they can come train here at the facility, or I can send a trainer out to their place to train them. So
call us at P413.
yeah.
so there we go. So I guess the next thing would be talking about sending trainers out. Brandon,
Mhm.
been with you a long time. We talked a little bit about him on the first time you were on.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about Brandon. Some of the stuff you see him do on his social media with his list and stuff is freaking unreal to watch.
Yeah, he's strong.
He's so strong. So tell us a little bit about how your relationship continues to go with Brandon and how he's transitioned to this facility.
I think he's transitioning really well. In terms of Brandon's like powerlifting, that's something I really want to start pushing. And me and Kai have talked about that a little bit. I want him to have a powerlifting team that travels. So I think our next goal with Brandon is let's set up a program for you for powerlifting. If you are someone who's interested in getting stronger or competing in powerlifting, I think Brandon's a great guy to go to for that. He's got a couple guys. A kid I trained in high school. His name's Trevor Silcox. He trains him, and he's gotten him so much stronger. He wins almost every meet he goes to. So Brandon right now is training for a meet himself. I can't wait for him to light that thing up. After he does that, I think we're on to a powerlifting program. So that's our next step with him, and I think it would be really awesome because he's got some unique ideas when it comes to training. That stuff. He runs a conjugate system, which was developed by Louis Simmons, but he's kind of made it his own. And I think like if you're a thrower, any type of strength sport athlete, I think that type of training could be effective for you. So if you're looking for that type of thing, I think Brandon's the right guy to hit up. So
and I've also given some thought to it because Brandon and I've had our own conversations, and Brandon asked me, he's like, what do you want out of, a fitness journey? Because, I've been back and forth, been trying to do, here and there with it. I just got to commit. I got to be like this guy over here. He's taking a toll.
The winter, Christmas, and the holidays were rough on me. I didn't get in here enough, and the scale's not as forgiving when you don't do the stuff you're supposed to do. So
yeah, but
today wasn't very forgiving either.
I'm paying for the month off.
Well, yeah, I mean, but just talking about that, like Brandon and I had conversations. He's like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to be explosive. I want to be happy with what I'm doing, and I just want to be really strong." Like that's what I talked to him about. And he's like, "Well, powerlifting is it." So I think I'm gonna probably take a little bit of a pledge myself
And do
probably,
some,
probably do some powerlifting
with
work
Brandon?
with Brandon. Yeah,
Work with Brandon. I mean, I get it. Brandon's awesome.
yeah, great guy.
like the accessories he builds in too will help keep you healthy. That's what a lot of like powerlifting programs that I've seen, because I've worked in a few different gyms and seen powerlifting programs, and not to knock on any of them, but they just like slam the main lifts. But really where your money's made is in the accessory training, like doing the extra exercises, the ones that come after the mains. So Brandon does a system, and I do it similarly with my athletes as well. We are going to train the main movements for sure, but once we hit a top set and we've peaked that exercise, we're going to use the rest of that energy to train accessories, because the accessories are what's going to train your weak points. So I think he does a really good job of training that stuff. So if you're looking to stay healthy, that's the most important part, right?
Yeah.
Because as you get older, I mean, it becomes a lot harder to stay. The weight room is your friend, but can also be your enemy. If you do it the wrong way, it can beat you up. So like today, when we trained, what did we do? We did mobility for 15, 20 minutes. We did an accessory circuit that kind of warmed up everything up. Because like Doug's got a history of low back pain. So I did exercises to help prepare him for the exercises, the main exercises, right? So it's not this, like when you go to school, they teach you to do your big exercises first and then the other exercises fall behind. Well, it's not always like that. It's not set in stone. You need somebody that knows you and knows your body to be able to program that correctly. So, I think he does a good job of that. So I would definitely suggest doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it now. Now you got me more locked in.
Oh, no, it's outstanding. So one of the things that one of the things I've learned to gather more. So when you came here, you worked with a lot of high school athletes.
Mhm.
You did a sensational job. The adaptability in you is what I've been the most impressed with over the last 4 to 5 months.
Appreciate it.
right? So I've seen you work with 8-year-olds, and I've seen you work with Mike Randolph, which I think watched Babe Ruth play, right? So
Mike.
I love Mike.
me too, right?
Mike's cool.
It's
Yeah.
not the way he snores. That's the only.
I've never heard him snore. I've
No,
never
you
heard
don't wanna. Let's go. Here we go. Working with Mike. Watch Babe Ruth.
So obviously we always pick on Mike. Mike's awesome, but I've seen you work with 8-year-olds. I've seen you work with Mike Randolph, who's in his 60s and trying to get what he can get out of it. And I've seen you have massive success with both. So tell us a little bit about the adjustability in your program. And I've talked to a few people that are like, man, I just don't think I'm ready to work with Sam because it looks pretty intense. You know what I mean? So tell us a little about the adjustability and how you gear it toward the individual client.
Okay, well, there's two different ways that we go about that, right? So are we talking about like athletes for the most part, right? Or are we talking about everyone?
I'm talking everything, 8 to 80. I mean,
Well, here's how I personally view training and in a general scope. Everybody needs to move fast in some way because fast twitch muscle fibers are the first things to start deteriorating as you age. A lot of people think it's your strength or your muscle mass, but the first thing that goes away is your fast twitch muscle fibers, and that's why you see like older people falling down, hurting themselves, things like that, because they don't have the ability to react and like catch themselves.
Right.
So even with like a Mike Randolph, he's gonna throw a med ball. We're gonna do something. You know what I mean? We're going to do something that gets him moving fast. I don't want him to be in pain. So it's selecting exercises that he can move fast on, whether it be rotationally, whether it be vertically, like throwing a medicine ball up. We're using a lot of medicine balls, right? We're not jumping on boxes with Mike. So, but he needs to move fast, right? And then on this, in that second part, following that up, we need to make sure we're building good structure and good posture. So for him, it's like we got to hit our face pulls. We got to hit our band pull aparts. We got to make sure glutes and hamstrings are firing before we train. And that's kind of what we did today.
for sure.
And then we got to build strength, So certain days I focus more on unilateral work, which is like single leg stuff. That's what I did with you guys today. Single leg work is super important, especially for like keeping knees healthy, things like that. But then there's other days where it's like, okay, I'm going to warm Mike up, and then we're going to do something more partial ranged, usually, like a trap bar deadlift, that gets him moving some weight, because your nervous system responds to that. Your nervous system responds to heavy loads. And that's a really good way to kind of fight aging, right? Is to make sure that you're staying strong. So we want to stay strong. We want to stay explosive. We want to have good structure, right? In terms of like a young kid, like coming into my classes, we have a speed session. We have a strength session. The strength session, the young kids are completely separated from the older kids. All the young kids are doing what I call like the fundamental movements. So those are like our goblet squats, being able to hold a dumbbell in the front.
Right. So kind of like what we covered in the first episode where you were telling like pistol squats. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, they're all doing like their fundamental movements, and I'm trying to make sure that they can do those properly, and I'll keep them there. Like it makes kids mad sometimes, and it also makes parents mad sometimes because they'll bring a kid in and they want me to do this like really high level stuff with them. But if I do that, I'm doing your kid a disservice. Because I think I talked about this on the first episode. It's kind of like a tube of toothpaste. You don't want to do the most high level things right off the bat, because if you do, you can't use them later. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like contrast training is it's not super high level, but contrast training is something that you can use with a high level athlete later on in their career to get that little extra boost of performance. But if I do contrast training when a kid's like 8, his body's not going to respond the same way to it later on. And also he might not have the foundation in order to perform that in a proper way. So sometimes I'll get a 16-year-old kid that comes in here and he can't do a squat. He can't stand on one leg. He can't do a push-up. And then the parents are like, why is he not back squatting? It's like, because if I put him under that bar, he's going to fold like an accordion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not about to do that. So it's, for me, like when kids come in to train with me, I think a lot of parents think I'm going to try to get them like a quick burst in a month, and then they can just leave and they'll be good. But the way I think about it, and the way if you're a good trainer, this is how you should think, is long-term development. So let's start and let's develop you from the bottom up, because that's how I wish somebody would develop me. The first time I ever trained, I think I put a bar on my back and squatted. That's a terrible way to start a kid.
first thing I've ever did too.
They don't
It's
know.
great.
They don't know how to. You don't know how to squat. And then
Me
so
too.
you too, yeah. And that's why you see people that are like, as they get older, like in our age group, like 20s, 30s, a lot of them have really bad like ankle mobility. They have like knee pain, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's just you think about it, if you put a bar on your back and you've never done it before. Number one, it's 45 pounds. You might not have the ability to squat 45 pounds in a good, solid pattern, and whatever side you're stronger on is just going to take over. You
Right.
get what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if you're stronger on your right side, you're just gonna push out of the bottom with it on that right side. So like for me, when I'm training young athletes, it's like, let's make sure that they can perform all these fundamental movements well. And then when I feel like they've got it down, then I move them to intermediate. So in the weight room, everything's general, especially when they're younger, right? So then I'll move them to intermediate. And then once they're in intermediate, they're doing things like trap bar deadlifts. They're doing things like eccentric overloaded chin-ups, because a lot of kids can't do chin-ups. That's a bad deal. If you can't do a chin-up, you probably don't have very good relative body strength, like strength in comparison to your body weight.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to run fast.
No.
Like I've seen kids improve their chin-up and get faster. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I mean, it's like the overall control of your body.
Yeah.
Because I think that I used to look at it this way, especially when I was in the military. I felt like general things like chin-ups, climbing a rope, it
Yeah.
required more than what you thought it would require.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of kids go dead and they use nothing but like their forearms or something in a chin-up, but there's no posture.
Yep.
A lot of kids that I've seen climb a rope use just their arms, and I don't see them use their legs and their abdomen. You know, like I'm with you on that.
Or they can't even hang from a bar.
Exactly.
Like I'll have kids, that's part of our foundational program. When they come in, like we do ISOs to start. Like a lot of kids will just do ISOs. But now we train too. Like they'll do like goblet squats, they'll do push-ups, things like that. But we'll have them hold handstands. We'll have them hang from the bar for as long as they can. And I want to see them be able to hang from the bar for 60 seconds. You know, I want to see them be able to hold a lunge for a long period of time without coming up or without wiggling around, you know?
Yeah.
I want to build their structure the right way. That way, I've got this huge foundation to work off of. And then as they get older, I can get more specific, and then they're killing it. Like a good example is Kobe Dews, from Butler. When he was younger, he was kind of like a baby deer, you know? He was just kind of like, he was athletic, but he was just all over the place, you know? So over the years, it's just been building his foundation. And I remember a few times he got discouraged because he would hit a growth spurt and he saw a 6-yard dash time come down. I was like, dude, just be patient. Just be patient, trust the program, keep training, keep doing, you know, and he went through that beginner phase, that intermediate phase. And now he's in high school and you're starting to see these times just keep dropping and dropping and dropping.
Yeah.
If I would have just pushed him to my highest level stuff when he was younger like that, he might have gotten hurt. He might not have had as high of a ceiling, you know, because the peak is only as high as the base will allow.
Yeah. So there's there's a process to all of this, and
when it comes to speed and agility, it's the same exact thing. We have a regression for every single movement that we do. Like a lot of young kids, when we're training young kids, the plyometrics and things, they don't even realize they're doing it. You know, we'll put it in the form of a game where we'll maybe put rings down and they have to hop through rings on a single leg, you know, but the older kids are jumping with dumbbells in their hands and dropping them or doing reactive hurdle hops, things like that, you know? So, although the kids might be training in the same group or the same class, the plyometrics are scaled based upon their ability to handle force, to use their stretch shortening cycle. That's like in a plyometric, that's what you're using, is your ability to kind of like pre-flex and quickly store and release energy. So with young kids, it's just teaching them how to do that properly. So everything is scaled, you know? So yeah. So relating this all back to a tube of toothpaste, right? So when I was younger, I would just like grab the top of the toothpaste and just and then you've got all this toothpaste at the bottom that you can't get to. And you get what I'm saying?
Rolling from the bottom.
Yeah, you always
Right.
want to
Makes sense.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
you want to push the toothpaste out from the bottom. You
Yes.
don't want to push it out from the top.
Right,
because then all this stuff's down the bottom, and then it's really hard to get to later on. Then you're cutting the toothpaste open, all kinds of. I mean, at that point,
That makes
at that point, it
sense.
doesn't really relate. But I'm just saying, like, you get what I'm saying, like.
But no, yeah, that made more sense than what I thought it was because I was letting the wheels spin. I'm
So-
like, I can't screw that
A
up.
little bit of a follow-up question on this is you talk about how you like to take a long-term approach with your athletes.
Mhm.
It's not short-term. So when guys have like these big scout days, like I know Kobe just had his,
Yeah.
Jackson just had his. You've had these guys, they got these big scout days that they're working toward where they need to test. How do you um, add in that short-term goal for this athlete with your long-term development? If that makes sense, just a little bit about that and how you go in
Like
that
how
process.
how do I make sure that they're ready for that at the
Yeah.
highest
Yeah, like
level?
how do you attack short-term goals with your long-term development plan in mind?
Well, here's the deal, man. If you look at most high school kids, and you can see the kids that don't train here, that don't train with me here. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
They don't even know how to do any of it. So they're going to scout days and they have no idea how to sprint at top end. So the very fact that they're training with me for year after year after year is preparing them for those scout days. All I have to really do for those big days is like they're still on the same they're always peaked, bro. They're always peaked.
Yeah.
All I have to do is make sure that their starts right,
Right.
all that. No, it doesn't matter how old they are, what program they're on. They're always peaked.
That makes sense. The next thing is you like to take this. So another thing I know, and it happens in every sport. This is something we've had a lot of discussions on. So I'm a little bit, how do you handle the athlete in season? So he trains with you for 6-8 months.
Yeah.
He's getting ready for his season, and then how do we make sure that athlete continues working with you, so he doesn't lose everything in season? And what advice would you give to athletes?
You almost need to train exactly the same. There's really not that much that changes. It's just volume, and then understanding like your weekly schedule. So if you play games on like Tuesdays and Thursdays, the days before those games, it's not like we're not going to train, but we're going to do like primer workouts, things to prime them for the game the next day, And then immediately after the game, there should be a hard workout that happens. Like if you have, let's say there's like, you have a game on Tuesday, then you don't have another game till Saturday. I don't know the exact schedule of these guys. I'll have to figure it out when we get there.
Yeah.
But let's say the game's on Tuesday and we don't have another game till Saturday. Well, the day before the game, we're going to do some type of primer workout, something to get them feeling explosive. And then immediately after that game, whether it be like right when they come off the field or like the next day, we should do a workout that's higher central nervous system, meaning like that's where like our heavier day. Maybe we're running a flat 10, maybe we're training strength a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes all sense in the world. So like I know in basketball they play like Tuesday, Friday. So it sounds like, I mean, obviously that's where your head is right now because that's where what you're currently training, right? Your basketball players.
Yeah.
They play Tuesday, Friday, then they come see Sam in between to make sure they're ready. What advice would you give to a baseball player, since a lot of our following is baseball athletes, softball athletes that play 5 a week, that play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday sometimes? What advice would you give to those athletes about how important it is to continue to maintain what they've been doing?
It's all about adjusting your volume. You can still do all the things that you want to do. You can still do your cleans, depending on, the athlete's mobility. Like we might make adjustments on the Olympic lifts, right? So like for baseball players, I'm not going to have them catch a clean. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I'm not going to have them like snap under it and they catch a clean in season maybe, but I might have them do a derivative of an Olympic lift. Like maybe I do like a high pull or a clean pull. You get what I mean?
Yes.
And then I'm going to drop that volume down a little bit so that they are more able to recover from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So maybe like in season, just like a good example, like in the off season, maybe we're doing 3 to 4 sets. Well, in season, we're doing like 1 to 2 hard working sets. So the workouts are just different. You get what I mean?
Yeah,
And we're
like
making
a little bit of
adjustments.
intensity.
Yeah, crucial to
adjustment.
still do it, but just make adjustments to how you do it.
Yeah, and the intensity still needs to stay high because
Yeah.
you don't want them to fall off. Baseball season's long.
Yeah.
Football season's long.
Yep.
I have football players that trained with me all through football season, and then and I adjusted their volume. I did that. I did that for them, and then when they come off season, they're like I'd give them a little bit of a deload right after the season's over, and then, dude, they're still strong when they come in and start training, so they're like ahead of everyone else. You know, they don't take these dips. Like you don't want to have a whole season where you don't train, because then all those athletic qualities you built throughout the off season are just going to be down, and then you have to build them all the way back up. It's like, no, dude, we need to be training, you need to be working, but the volume needs to be adjusted. The thing is, like I train like that all the time because I never know what I'm going to be doing. I like to do a lot of stuff. I like to snowboard. I like to play spike ball. I like to go play pickup basketball, things like that. So my volumes are always lower, but I try to keep my intensity high. You can get a lot out of like 2 hard sets. You don't always need to just like push yourself into the ground, especially as an athlete. So like you're still going to get the same hormonal response from training as long as your intensity's high. You know, we don't have to just keep pushing people into the ground. So, and I generally run with a lower volume system anyways. I run lower volume. A lot of coaches will do a lot more than what I make my athletes do, but my intent is high, the intent is high, and the intensity is high. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, so my question, and this is kind of, I don't really know if this is a good question or if this is a bad question, but let's say it's game day, right? What exactly would you recommend for an athlete to do on game day?
I would start them off with some like myofascial release type stuff. And I would also do some breathing techniques. Like I would definitely do, like when I was younger, I would like take pre-workout and like go nuts before the game. And I would be like freaking buzzing like 2 hours before the game. And then by the time the game got there, I was like drained. I would take a totally different approach now, like with my athletes. I would start them out with some myofascial release, like foam rolling, things like that. I would do some breathing.
This is like pre-game warm-up?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not trying to cut you.
No.
But because I do like that and I do want you to get into that. But maybe let's say like wake up. Like, do you guys would you recommend working out in the morning, in the day?
I would recommend maybe doing some structural stuff for like your shoulders,
Okay.
some hamstrings, maybe something like that, and then doing some like primers. Like I know baseball players love to like feel their core. They love to feel like they like to have tension in their core. So one thing, and I actually saw A-Rod do this when I was younger, but he like stands on home plate and he freaking just launches medicine balls. He would just launch medicine balls. I was like, that's the coolest exercise ever. And now you see me do it all the time in here. I have kids that I've been doing that exercise forever. Like, but that is a great primer exercise because it gets the posterior chain going. It gets their trunk working, all of those things, you know? So I would do things that are like fast and explosive at a very low volume on game
Right.
day.
And then moving back into that warm-up routine you were talking about,
Yeah.
foam rolling.
That would be first.
Yeah.
That would be first. Yeah, the foam rolling, the breath work, all that stuff would be first. And then I would move into like an explosive medicine ball routine and then go game, go
Right.
play.
So just trying to be explosive and get moving, really, not like a lot of heavy lifting and whatnot.
No, you don't want the first time that you experience force to be the time you hit the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't want the first time that you feel like a give back is the first time you hit the ball. You want to have felt that beforehand.
Right.
In my opinion.
No, I agree with that heavily. It's great.
So my next question would be, now that you're the director of P413 Baseball's performance, and we got our big scout day coming up with 60, 70 of our athletes working out for PBR on Monday, how has that changed your mentality going into one of these? It's just not one of your individual athletes going.
Oh, I'm going nuts.
And what do you think that moment's going to be like when you're in here, when we're getting ready to train all this stuff and you're in here with your athletes on Monday?
I don't know if it's going to be weird for me, but it might be weird for them because they're going to see it totally. I'm going to be all over them. So I think it might freak some of them out because I'm going to actually force them to go through and prepare themselves for the start of the 60. I'm going to put them through a good warm up. All of those things are going to be super important because I feel like a lot of times kids come in and they have no idea what to do and how to prime for a scout day like that. And I think the warm up's the most important part there. Because a lot of times, if you're running a 60, a kid will do like a couple sets of skips and then they'll run a 60. It's like, dude, there's a lot more that we need to be doing,
Yeah.
We want to connect both sides of the brain. We want to do some type of like whether it be like some type of game or some like a rolling pattern. Like rolling's really good, like rolling and that's why I have our the guys do tumbling all the time because it's really good about connecting both sides of the brain and it kind of wakes you up and makes you feel more present in the moment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I
Yeah,
want them to feel present. So, yeah, but I am kind of losing it. A lot of the guys need to work on their top end speed. A lot of the guys need to work on relaxing after that. It's like I've taught them how to like shoot themselves out of a cannon, but they don't know how to control it after that. So this week, they're going to be working on that. Like
Okay.
like today,
Heck yeah.
like today, they're going to be working
So
on.
my next question is not for you, but it's for Doug. I kind of have my own answer, but can you tell me a little bit about like how we structured our dynamic warm up, and then like after we hired Sam and you saw warm ups, tell me the difference and what you
So I
see.
would say for our dynamic, not much different. And that's because Juan's very, very good at what Juan does. You know what I mean? So we've always trusted Juan's stuff. What I'll say is pregame will be different because Sam has created a pregame package for us, for our coaches, that we're going to send out and, you know, and all that stuff. So um, pregame will definitely look different with what Sam has put into our program. I think the dynamic stuff, it's different. Like I don't see Sam very often do a quote unquote dynamic warm up. You know what I mean? He kind of has his own spin and it's different every day, which I actually think is really exciting for the athlete because they're not doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
They're not having a conversation going through the same things every time where they're not really locked in on it. They're talking to their buddy, but hey, coach, I did it. So I think Sam's changed the mental intent of our warm up. I would say is the biggest difference. I think it's like I said, he's made a big difference on the mental intent of our warm up, which I think has allowed guys to be a little bit more in the moment when we get started, which is obviously an incredible thing. So, but I would say that's the biggest difference. I mean, I think Sam has made a lot of differences in our program. He's helped a lot of our athletes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely different. I don't want to say it's massively better, you know, not better or whatever, but it's different. The mental intent is massively better because it's not the same old standard routine. You know what I mean? They're not just like, oh, well, I've done this 8,064 times. I think his ability to put them in a good mental headspace to take the warm up more seriously is what's helped our athletes.
I like that. It was a great answer.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your warm up? Like you know the most important things for you, right? You mentioned it, like you want to get them kind of into action before they get to action.
Yeah.
But like your mental approach, I feel like you like with the competing, we spoke about that. Tell me a little bit about what you want these kids to do, because my attack here is that you have like an elemental surprise
Yeah.
every time you get into a warm up.
And I built that in for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, that's what I'm kind of getting at. That's the nitty gritty of my question is you, boom, punch, let's go. Hey, this is what we're doing. And it's like, tell me why. Because is it for your room control? Is it to get the athlete's mindset to change? Like, why are you so
Well, the thing
straight
is,
off the track?
like if I was running it, like if it was, I'm not. So it's not. But if, like, let's say I'm coaching a football team because I'm a football guy. So every team that you would play, like let's say I'm playing against, I'll use NFL teams because everybody knows NFL teams. Let's say I'm playing against the Steelers. They're very physical. The Steelers are classically a very physical team. They're someone that's going to hit you in the mouth. So like the warm-up drills and things like that are going to prep them for that. And the week of practice before that is going to prep them for physicality. But then let's say I play against the Bengals. The Bengals, the best team ever. Okay, so let's say I'm playing against the Bengals. Okay, they're a high flying, like move the ball, like kind of a hurry up offense type situation. The drills and things that I would do to prepare my team for that would look different than if I was playing the Steelers.
Right.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
well, yeah, you're going from a different style of play, so you
Yeah,
can't
and
attack it
that's
the same
why
way.
I think it's important to have gamification in warmups because you can take games, like I have games for every scenario. Like top end speed day, like when we're training like you know, upright running mechanics and things like that. I have different games I play on those days than games that I would play on a day for acceleration or change of direction. So, yeah, I mean every single so they when I'm if I was a coach of a team, like if I was playing for them, I don't know like the dynamics of every team, but I would look at the team across and I would be able to come up with, okay, this is what we're going to do. Like we're going to go through mobility and then we're going to go through our activation type stuff. And then we're going to come up with some type of structured game that's going to prepare them for what that team, because every game's different. So I really like that aspect of warm-ups, and I like being able to control warm-ups because you're never going to do the same thing in a game. Like when I played football, every game felt like a totally different sport almost. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't always feel the same, especially if you play like a defensive position. You know, every team runs different style offense. They run different tempos. So it's important for me to prepare them for that type of style. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, like if you're playing the Steelers, dude, you probably should hit each other before you start.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you should probably get the pads popping before you start. If you're playing the Bengals, you should probably be almost like you should do some top end speed work. You should make sure your guys are feeling fast because they're fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So the tempo is just different. And I don't want kids. And another thing is, like with baseball, you warm up so many times. You guys play like 1,000,000 games a week, right?
Yeah.
If every warm up's the same, it's going to become monotonous. And that's what leads to like these like drops in performance is the monotony of things.
So I guess following up on that on baseball, and this is something you and I haven't even really discussed yet, but so let's say we go to a game, we're at a tournament, right? Game before us ends. Umpires walk by and go, you got 12 minutes to play and we still got to throw. As a guy who has a warm-up, okay, I've got 4 minutes to do this because I need 7 minutes to throw. Where would you go then, and what advice would you give to coaches if they've only got 4 or 5 minutes before your athlete has to throw and you got to play in 11?
You do some work for your T-spine. You do some hip mobility. You do something to make sure that like the posterior shoulder, like the posterior part of the shoulder is feeling good. And then you do some type of like quick like game, whether it be like a knee tag or like a quick game of like sharks and minnows, or like there's a million different ways that you could skin that, or like you do like ball drop accelerations, things like that where they're having to move like on reacting to something else.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's what I would do. If I had 4 minutes, I can get that done in 4 minutes. I can do 2 minutes of mobility and activation of the main things that I know we're going to need, because baseball players need hips and they need shoulders. So that both those things need to be mobilized and activated, and then move into some type of game type situation. Because you only got 4 minutes, you know, you can go, like if you play a couple rounds of knee tag, toe tag, there's different like little short tag games that you can play. Like if you can do that for 2 minutes, that's gonna be way better than like skipping.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because even at that point, like the 4 minutes, they do the skipping, the stretching.
One of the biggest things that annoys me right now in these tournaments when you go to them, right? You've got, I mean, yeah, you can kind of warm up somewhere, but then you don't exactly know when that game in front of you is going to end.
Yeah.
And then they're like, and then the umpire will come off and they'll go, hey, you got 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, or hey, we need to go in 12 minutes. And then that's when I'm usually the guy that gets into it with somebody and goes, my pitcher's not going to be ready in 12 minutes. And there's other coaches out there that'll do that too.
Right.
Or like we'll go up and if we win the toss, we'll choose visitors, which will offend the other coach. But it's like my pitcher needs time to throw. You know what I mean? And that's the game in the game.
What I want to do, if I get any say in how P4 warms up, we're bringing spike ball nets, dude. If I get any say, like you guys should be, it would be the most intimidating thing ever. It really would be. Because like a lot of the guys are actually getting a lot better at spike ball, which is cool for me because I like spike ball. But
yeah,
you know, can you imagine like if you were a team and you were playing and you're like doing these dynamic warm ups all monotonous and like talking about freaking Barbie dolls or whatever the crap they talk about, and then you look across and the other team's playing spike ball and they're like yelling at each other and competing and they're freaking ready.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like dude,
you would be.
You would
be shocked.
And you would be a bet, like, even if you're like more prepared for that game mentally, physically, all of that. Because spike ball, there's all these different, like, there's these different cuts you have to make. There's all these like little extensive like bounces and cuts that you have to make that are going to actually show up in the game of baseball.
I'm gonna laugh if I see spike ball nuts.
No, they are. You're going to.
It'll probably happen.
Because I'm coming to some of them tournaments. I'm coming. I'm gonna have a couple spike ball nets ready, and I'm throwing them out there on the field before you guys start. Because can you imagine, dude?
No, seriously, no, I'm with you on that for sure. Because it's just you see them
Or
It's
if you
the
thought,
fast twitch stuff again.
yeah, because like I think when we go into it, every now and then we should do like a max velocity session before. Like if you get 40 minutes,
Yeah.
I think we should get them out there sprinting.
Mhm.
Can you imagine
Yeah. I get
if
it.
you had them out there if you had them out there max velocity sprinting before a game? I'm not saying at high volume, like 1 or 2 hard
Yeah. I'm not-
sprints, even like putting a timer out and like
Right.
sprinting them. And dude, that would be a great way to maintain a kid's speed throughout the season, and then also be ultra primed to play. Ultra primed, you know. Yeah, that kind of stuff really excites me. I would
I
love
know.
to just do that, dude. I would love to just be a like traveling baseball trainer, like just
Yeah.
or
Yeah, that's
basketball,
awesome.
whatever sport it would be.
I guess so. My next question would be: obviously, you've now been here almost, 9 months,
Mhm.
right? We're working up to the first year here. With what you know over this past 9 months, and you've kind of got to see how your schedule plays out and what areas you're in and this and that. What have you learned that's going to help your program get better over the next year? And what are you excited about coming next?
I'm really excited to see how these guys I've trained do this season. That's going to be the coolest thing ever for me because there's so many kids that train here, you know? So I'm really excited about that. I think next year I'm just going to have a better idea of what the schedule looks like because this was my first year. I didn't really know anything about select baseball before I came here. To be honest, I didn't know anything about it. So everything was kind of on the fly, and me figuring it out. I think next year I'll have a more structured idea of like what I'm gonna do, but I'm still gonna be Sam, so it's probably gonna be nuts. So it's probably gonna be all over the place. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have a better idea next year of what I'm going to do. But yeah, man, I'm just really excited to watch the guys play. I think it's gonna be really cool.
I'm excited to watch them play too.
Yeah, as am I. I can't wait. I mean, with us, being only a few days away from tryouts.
There's some good players here, dude.
Yeah.
There's some good players.
We're around some very special athletes. Some guys have had some massive off seasons. It's really, really good to see.
Yeah. And a lot of them play like multiple sports too, which is really cool. Like what's his name? Combs. Like he's one of my favorite guys.
Grady.
So speaking of that, Grady. Grady's my guy.
Yeah.
I love me some Grady Combs. So I'm laughing because Saturday night Grady drops like 40 plus.
Course.
And
Such a dog.
gets banged up, right? So he comes in Sunday morning. He's got this big bandage. I'm not gonna say where because I don't know if that's an advantage or not. But he's got this big bandage on, and he's here at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, and dropped 40 the night before, and he goes through his entire workout. Hey, you don't have to run the 60. You're committed. No, I'm running it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So he goes and runs it, and runs pretty much what he normally runs, and which I thought was impressive after playing a basketball game the night before and being banged up with, but it's just kids like that are what make this program. You know what I mean? Guys like Grady Combs, just guys that just want to be here, And there's, a ton of them that I could say that about. That's just one example, you know what I mean? But, and, and then I just laugh, 'cause some kids will be like, man, I just don't know that I'm ready for this kind of level of commitment. I don't know if I want to train 3, 4, 5 days a week. You know what I mean? And that's okay. As we know, we're not for everyone. But to see a guy like that who is playing basketball, but yet he's still in the facility multiple days every week, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then drops 40 plus points the night before, and then comes in and works out.
Runs a 60, still does well.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just like it's special to be around these athletes. So we do have a lot of good players and better humans
Yeah.
in the facility,
Yeah.
which has been awesome.
And Grady's like a battle-proof guy anyway. You know what I mean? Like I feel like Grady, no matter what, I've seen Grady play a few games in the summer. I've seen him play a game at Madison. I've only watched one basketball game, but it seems like every time I see him, either it's on a court or on a field, it's just he knows how to flip that switch.
So competitive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And those are always the best guys, as you were talking about earlier. If you're competitive and like you just want to be good at whatever you do, I mean, those are the guys you want to be around.
Not afraid to fail.
No.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
Is a guy that's like willing to put themselves out there. Like I can tell a lot about a kid is if I ask them to play like a game of spike ball, a game of pickup basketball, whatever. I can tell a lot about a kid about how they respond to that question. You can tell if a kid's like
A little insecure, a little.
if they're like,
nervous.
no, I don't really want. Can we just train? It's like, dude, like you should be chomping at the bit
Really,
to
I mean,
beat
literally.
somebody,
Yeah, to compete for sure.
to beat somebody in something. You know what I mean? So I think part of me, like when I was younger, there was a part of me that was kind of like that. That was a little afraid to. As I got older, I was like, dude, screw it. I'm going to go hard on everything. I'm going to try to be the best at everything. But when I was younger, there was a time where I was afraid to do things that I wasn't experienced or good at. But dude, the kids that are willing to just put themselves out there and do whatever, you know, even if they're not good at it, those kids are going to build. That's building a foundation right there.
Absolutely.
You know, the kids that are willing to put themselves out there and just try anything and get better at anything, and they don't worry about whether they're the best at it or not. They just worry about whether they're doing it and they're getting better. I think those are the kids that you really want on your team.
Yeah, completely.
Any sport.
Yeah.
Any sport.
Yeah. So my last question to follow up is, now that you've been through an off season, because the kids leave the 24th for tryouts, basically the high school kids, what was it? Was there any surprises in the program, or was there, obviously you like a lot of it,
Oh, yeah.
What are some things that you learned about working with myself, working with Juan, working with Kai, working with Xavier, working with Frank? What are some of the things that you learned about that relationship and how you fit into that situation? And then what are some things that excited you, and what are some things that you're like, okay, I didn't realize this, I'm going to add this going forward to, make the circle complete?
Dude, well, first of all, I just have really enjoyed, I think it's just a really good fit overall for all of us. I think what you guys do is so good for those kids, because baseball is a specialization sport. You kind of have to practice it all the time, whether you're playing another sport or not. I don't think that you should not play other sports, but I think baseball is one of those sports where I think baseball, quarterback, and offensive line are three things that I can think of right now that you have to kind of specialize in, And I think that what you guys do is give them the ability to have confidence doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing, right? Because a lot of that stuff is super technical, like what Juan does, like the medicine ball throws and stuff. That teaches them how to move their body properly. And if they didn't have that, they're just kind of throwing it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
specializing in the fact that we have to do our work regardless. You should play basketball, and you should wrestle, and you should play football, and you should do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Go out there and play everything. Have fun, have a blast. You're only in high school once, but you do have to get your stuff done in baseball to be successful. So I agree with that.
And even if you play those sports, you still need, I'm not trying, I guess I'm plugging myself, but even if you play those sports, you still need to train general qualities.
Yes.
Because you're not going to, when you play basketball, you're not going to get out in the open and sprint as hard as you possibly can. You're not going to jump. You get what I'm saying? The sports don't offer everything that you need. You still need a training program. So I think the way that it meshes, I have nothing negative to say about it. Nothing. I think the kids that have done all of it, like the kids that do Top V, the kids that train with me, the kids that train with you guys, it shows. It shows. So I have nothing negative to say about it. I think it's been a great experience. I don't really know what I would change. I'm not really that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the type of person to tell you what I would change next year or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm very intuitive. So I think it'll just happen.
Yeah,
Right,
and maybe
it just changed, not because I wanted it to, but because I found something.
Yeah, because something that I intuitively saw in the moment, it changed. But I feel yeah, there's nothing. I don't think I would change a thing.
How's the relationships
With the kids?
Kids, trainers?
Oh, with you guys? Dude, it's best. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I feel like we get along pretty well, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my closing question, you and I were kind of having a conversation about your trip. You mentioned it in the beginning.
Yes, dude.
So give us a little bit of that mental marmalade.
Oh, yeah.
And throw us on a little bit of a focus train.
So this is something I think that I even think you could benefit from this sometimes, because you work yourself into the ground. This guy works himself into the ground. He's hardest working guy I've ever met, to be honest. And I feel like I can get that way as well. As soon as because I have two kids at home. One of them's 1 and one of them's 3.
Yeah, it makes me think of my text I sent you the other day.
Yeah, dude, I was going nuts.
You were on your trip going, this.
I was like, dude, I got to do this. I got to do this. And he was like, shut up and go snowboarding. And I was like, okay. and so I went snowboarding. And as soon as I got
shut up, go snowboarding and enjoy your wife.
Yeah. And as soon as I freaking strapped my feet into that thing, everything just relaxed. And I had all of these ideas about of things that I can change, not with the program or anything like that, but with my life. Because you get so wrapped up in, building your business, and that's good. Like, we're entrepreneurs. We're trying to
Yeah,
build.
that's what we're supposed
We're
to.
trying to build ourselves, right? But you get so wrapped up in trying to build your business and be the best that you can be that you think that that's all that there is. But you still need to be an interesting person. Like, you're not fun to be around if you're not having fun. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of where I get sometimes. Like, I've done that, especially here, because this is my first year here. So naturally, I'm grinding my butt off. I'm just trying as hard as I possibly can all the time.
Yeah.
But as soon as I put my feet in that board and started snowboarding, I was like, oh man, I've been doing some things wrong. I need to relax a little bit. Like, you got to give yourself a break sometimes, and you got to go have fun, you know? And I don't think it's like sitting down and watching TV. For me, I have to be moving. I have to be, using my body a little bit. So I went snowboarding. I snowboarded the whole weekend. I didn't think about anything. I was just like, what run we hitting next? Am I going to die on this double black? You know what I mean? My wife went down a double black diamond. You guys know what that means?
No.
So there's like green, blue, and black. Those are the levels of the hills. And at this place, I'd never seen a double black. It was called Goosebumps. And it was a double black diamond. And I was like, and it was like freezing raining out too. And my wife is like just kind of new to snowboarding, but she's pretty good at it right now. And I was like, are we going to go down this? She's like, I'm going down. I was like, we could get hurt, like bad hurt. Cause it was icy, ice rain and everything, dude. And it's like straight down. It's like going like this.
Yeah.
And I went down that thing and I got to the bottom and I was like, that was awesome. I looked up and she's carving down. I'm like, dude, this is like life though, Like, life is so important. You have to live it. You have to live it or you're not fun to be around.
Yeah.
You're not, And so as soon as I got in the car, we were driving back, I was like, dude, there's so much stuff that I need to do in order to keep progressing forward. And it's not sitting in the gym and grinding, you know what I mean? I'm going to do that anyways.
Right.
But there's some things that I need to change and some mental blocks that I have right now that if I fix these, I'm going to be better at everything that I do, Because when you got 2 kids, a 1 and a 3-year-old, and you got a business like this where I'm in here all the time, you can get caught. My wife runs her own business too.
Yeah.
So my wife we got 4 babies. We got 2 businesses and 2 babies.
Yeah.
You can get caught up in like grinding yourself into the dirt, basically.
Yeah.
Hey,
Krista and I we definitely deal with it as well. We've got our son, T.K.E.M,
Mhm.
he's 5. And then our daughter, Elizabeth, she's 2. She'll be 2 in a couple weeks. But like, we definitely get caught up in the grind. And I mean, you are the guy who did it before us, right? I mean, you've definitely, you and Jamie and all your guys' kids.
Yeah, most of mine are grown now.
Yeah, but you did it before us.
The baby's 11, so it's a little different. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely missed a lot. So it's part of it.
Yeah, but I don't want to. Yeah, basically, it just as soon as I got on that board and then went through that process of just doing that all weekend, I got off and I was like, okay, I could be like a lot better but I would have never saw those things if I just kept going.
That makes sense.
For
sure.
So
You give a little bit of a reset.
yeah. And I don't think God wants us living like that either. I don't think God wants us like grind. There's, I don't know. This ain't everything.
Work
It is.
life.
It is everything, but it's not everything. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah. We have to have fun. I think it's actually like our duty to have fun sometimes.
I agree.
So
I agree. I do love the work. I love the hard work, but I also love to be able to have that time.
and that was a really good weekend. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, we just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in today. It's about all the time we have. Sam, thanks for coming on for part 2. I hope we did the part 2 thing right.
Yeah, we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll definitely see you again soon.
Sounds good to me. Thanks.
If you guys want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And then to see our notifications on social media, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right, boys.
It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time. Slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.